we know you're busy, so forget digging through piles of research. We've got you covered.
Yeah, we've waded through it all.
Today we're jumping headfirst into the amazing story of human evolution, using all the latest science right up to April 2025. Consider this your fast track to understanding, well, us. The key moments, the driving forces, the surprises that shaped who we are today.
Exactly. We're basically trying to piece together this incredible journey, stretching back millions, even billions of years if you go way back.
From those very first primate ancestors.
All the way to us, Homo sapiens. And the goal really is to highlight the big discoveries, but also, the ongoing questions that keep scientists busy. Our understanding keeps changing.
Okay, let's set the scene then. We're talking, what, roughly 65, maybe 55 million years ago, just after the dinosaurs checked out.
Right. A world in flux.
So what was it like for our earliest tiny primate relatives stepping onto that stage?
Well, imagine massive ecological shifts happening. The mammals that made it through the extinction event, they started diversifying like crazy.
Filling the gaps.
Precisely. And somewhere in that mix were the ancestors of primates. We have fossil evidence, like Purgatorius. It's considered a protoprimate.
What did it show?
Early signs of adapting to life in the trees. Crucially, grasping hands. You need those for climbing, right?
Makes sense.
And genetically, this is when we see the primate line starting to diverge from other mammals.
Yeah.
Key early traits seem to be better vision and the beginnings of a relatively larger brain.
So tiny tree-dwelling creatures, good eyes, grabbing hands, starting to get a bit smarter. Okay, let's jump forward quite a bit, maybe 25 down to 5 million years ago. Africa, the first hominoids appear.
Yeah, the hominoids.
What made them different?
What's really interesting here is the mix of features. Take proconsul, lived around 20 million years ago. It's got this blend of monkey and ape characteristics.
Like what?
Well, larger brains than monkeys around at the time, but importantly, no tail. That's an ape-like thing.
Okay, losing the tail.
Then, fast forward a bit more to around 7 million years ago, and you get something like Sahelanthropus tudensis. This one really sparks debate.
Why is that?
Its brain was still quite small, ape-sized.
Yeah.
But the skull, specifically where the spinal cord connects the foramen and magnum, its position hints that Sahelanthropus might have walked upright.
Oh, hold on. Upright walking. 7 million years ago. That sounds early.
It does. And it suggests a major adaptation, possibly linked to environmental changes in Africa. Maybe forests were shrinking, grasslands expanding.
So standing up helps see over the grass or move between tree patches.
Could be. It definitely frees up the hands, too, which, becomes important later.
Right. Tools and carrying things.
Exactly. And this brings us neatly to the Australopithecines. We're now talking roughly 4 to 2 million years ago. Everyone knows Lucy, right? Australopithecus afarensis.
Yep, the famous one, about 3.2 million years old.
So what did Lucy and her relatives show us? Well, with them, bipedalism is undeniable. Their skeletons are clearly built for walking on 2 legs.
But the brains were still small.
Still relatively small, yeah. Comparable to modern apes. So walking upright came before the big brain expansion. Freeing the hands seems to have been a crucial early step.
Interesting.
And adding a layer of complexity, some 2023 studies looking at Australopithecus and fossils suggest it wasn't a sudden switch.
Oh.
It looks like maybe some individuals still had features suited for climbing trees pretty well. Suggests maybe a mixed lifestyle, walking on the ground, but still comfortable in the trees.
So not like flipping a switch, but more gradual, maybe different groups trying different strategies. Okay, that leads us towards our own genus, Homo, around 2.5 million years ago.
Yeah, starting around then, maybe a bit earlier. First step, Homo habilis, the handyman.
Because of tools.
Exactly, associated with the first really consistent evidence of making and using simple stone tools. Oldemon tools, they're called.
Simple choppers and flakes.
Pretty much. But then comes Homo erectus, around 1.9 million years ago. And this is a major, major player.
How so? What changed?
Several big things. Significantly larger brains than habilis. And perhaps the real game changer, evidence suggests they controlled fire.
Fire. Okay, that sounds huge.
Think about it. Cooking food makes it easier to digest, unlocks way more calories. That extra energy could fuel those bigger brains.
Plus warmth, protection from predators.
A social focus point, maybe? And Homo erectus wasn't content staying put. They were the first hominins we know for sure ventured out of Africa.
Right, spreading into Asia, Europe.
And really recent genetic work from 2024 suggests these erectus populations adapted to different climates out there. And interestingly, they seem to have interbred with other groups they met, like the Denisovans.
Wow. Okay, so fire, bigger brains, migration, even interbreeding way back then. Homo erectus sounds pivotal.
Absolutely, a turning point.
So moving forward again, we get into the archaic humans, maybe 800,000 down to 200,000 years ago. This includes species like Homo heidelbergensis and the Neanderthals, right? Our famous cousins.
That's the period. And yes, Neanderthals fall into this group. With these archaic humans, brain size gets even larger, often within the modern human range, sometimes even exceeding the average.
And behaviorally, more complex.
Definitely. We see evidence for more sophisticated hunting, large game hunting, building shelters, not just using caves. And many researchers think they must have had some form of communication, maybe precursors to language.
And the Neanderthal connection to us.
Yeah.
It's real, right? We have their DNA.
Oh, absolutely real.
Yeah.
Recent findings, updated through 2025, confirm it clearly. People today whose ancestry is primarily non-African carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA.
1 to 2%. It doesn't sound like a lot, but
It's significant. And it's not just random bits. Some of those genes seem to be involved in things like our immune system function, how our skin adapts to sunlight and cold, things that might have helped modern humans adapt as they moved into Neanderthal territories.
So we met them, interbred, probably around 50,000 years ago or so, and we picked up some useful genes.
That's the picture, yes.
Yeah.
Direct evidence of interaction and gene flow.
Incredible. It makes them feel less like a separate other and more like part of our extended family history.
Precisely. Which brings us finally to us, Homo sapiens. A pairing, the latest evidence suggests, maybe around 300,000 years ago?
Where did we first show up?
In Africa. The oldest fossils currently identified as Homo sapiens were found in Morocco, dated to about 315,000 years ago. Jebel Irhoud.
Okay. And what made us different? What allowed Homo sapiens to eventually spread across the entire planet?
Well, alongside the biological changes, like perhaps a differently organized brain, even if size was similar to Neanderthals, we see a flourishing of complex behaviors, much more advanced toolkits, bone tools, projectiles. Symbolic behavior becomes undeniable: art, ornamentation.
Cave paintings, beads.
Exactly, and complex language. This combination likely fueled incredible social cooperation, cultural learning, and adaptability. It let us tackle almost any environment.
And then the big out of Africa expansion.
That really kicks off around 60,000 years ago, give or take. But new research complicates that slightly. The 2024 study looking at ancient genomes from Africa suggests that before that main dispersal, there wasn't just one ancestral Homo sapiens group. It seems there were multiple distinct populations across Africa, diverging, sometimes mixing again, creating a complex tapestry of diversity within Africa before the major migration out.
So our origins within Africa itself are more complicated than we thought, like different streams merging.
Exactly. A braided stream is a good analogy, actually. It wasn't just one lineage marching forward.
Okay, stepping back then, if you had to pinpoint the major drivers of this whole 7 million year saga, what would they be?
It's really a mix of interacting factors. Big environmental changes were huge. Think about Africa drying, savannas expanding around 3 million years ago that likely pushed adaptations like bipedalism and maybe early tool use.
Environment puts on the pressure.
Definitely. Then there's diet. The shift towards maybe more meat, and especially cooking with Homo erectus, provided the energy needed for bigger, more energy-hungry brains.
Fueling the brain.
And then, particularly with Homo sapiens, social factors become paramount. Complex cooperation, group living, teaching, language. These allow for culture to build up and provide really powerful survival strategies.
Culture is an evolutionary force.
Absolutely. And underpinning all of this are genetic mutations. Random changes pop up, and if they happen to provide an advantage in that environment with those behaviors, they spread. Think of genes involved in brain development or something like FOXP2, which is linked to speech and language capabilities.
Genes, environment, behavior, all tangled together.
It's a constant feedback loop.
All right, let's get into the really fresh stuff. The last couple of years, 2023 to 2025, what are some highlights that have you excited?
Oh, it's been busy. Ancient DNA continues to be revolutionary. That 2024 work, for example, looking at 40,000-year-old Homo sapiens in Europe, we can actually see genetic markers suggesting rapid adaptation to cold climates. Genes involved in how they metabolize fat, for instance.
Wow, seeing evolution in action almost.
Pretty close. And the Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA story keeps getting richer. We're linking those ancient genes to more and more traits in modern humans. Immunity, definitely. High-altitude adaptation in Tibetans, that's partly Denisovan. even susceptibility to some modern diseases, like some studies linked certain variants to COVID-19 severity.
It's wild how these ancient encounters still echo in our health today.
It really is. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're part of our living biology.
What about digging things out of the ground? Any big fossil finds?
Yes, a couple of really interesting ones. That work in South Africa in 2023 on Homo naledi. It's controversial, but the team presented evidence suggesting this small brain species, living maybe 250,000 years ago, might have deliberately buried its dead in deep caves.
Burial. That implies
Um,
symbolic thought, beliefs.
That's the implication and why it's debated. It potentially pushes symbolic behavior back much earlier into a species with a smaller brain than we usually associate it with. Big questions there.
Definitely want to watch. Anything else?
Also in 2023, new Homo sapiens fossils found in Ethiopia were dated to around 230,000 years ago. That helps fill in the picture of our species' presence in East Africa during that crucial early period.
So, refining the timeline, adding complexity. What about the artifacts? Tools, culture?
Good point. It's not just bones. 2025 saw reports on some really sophisticated 50,000-year-old bone tools from Ethiopia, indicating advanced hunting techniques were developing perhaps earlier or more widely than previously thought.
More skilled hunters.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And of course, the ongoing discoveries in dating of cave art, like in Indonesia pushing 45,000 years, and classic sites in Europe constantly reinforce how early humans were thinking symbolically, telling stories, creating meaning.
Art as a window into their minds.
Exactly. And tying back to the genetics, you mentioned the interbreeding story getting more complex.
Yeah, the ghost populations.
Right. Genomic studies in 2024 are strongly suggesting that our Homo sapiens ancestors in Africa didn't just mix amongst themselves before leaving. They likely also interbred with other now extinct hominin groups within Africa, groups we don't have fossils for yet, hence ghosts.
So, Neanderthals and Denisovans outside Africa and maybe other unknown groups inside Africa?
That seems to be the picture emerging. It makes the braided stream analogy even more fitting. A much more interconnected, reticulated history than a simple tree with neat branches.
Okay, so this braided stream model, it really shifts the perspective away from a linear march of progress, doesn't it?
Completely. It emphasizes coexistence, interaction, gene flow between different human forms for potentially long periods.
So what does this model tell us about why we, Homo sapiens, ultimately succeeded while the others vanished?
Well, success is a loaded term, but why are we the only ones left? It's likely a combination. Maybe superior cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt quickly to new challenges. Maybe more efficient social learning and cooperation, scaled up by language. Perhaps technological innovation just gave us a critical edge, especially during periods of climate stress.
A mix of brainpower, teamwork, and tools.
Probably something like that. But it's crucial to remember this picture is constantly being updated. New fossils, new genomes, new dating techniques. They keep refining and sometimes radically changing our understanding. It's a very active field.
Let's just quickly recap some key numbers then. Human evolution, broadly speaking, spans maybe 7 million years since that potential split from chimp ancestors.
Roughly, yes.
Homo sapiens, us, emerged around 300,000 years ago in Africa. Brain size went from maybe 400 cubic centimeters in an Australopithecine like Lucy to around 1,350 cc on average for us today.
A huge increase.
We left Africa in major waves starting around 60,000 years ago, reaching Australia surprisingly early, maybe 65,000 years ago, and the Americas much later, perhaps 15,000 years ago or so.
Those are the general timelines, yes.
And the other guys, Neanderthals, Denisovans, they disappeared around 40,000 or 50,000 years ago. Maybe competition with us, climate change, maybe disease, likely a mix.
Most likely a combination of factors, yeah.
Yeah.
Their extinction is still a big research question.
So the big takeaway is that it's not a line, but this complex, interwoven stream.
Exactly. Our history is tangled, dynamic, and involve contributions from multiple lineages.
This has been fascinating, seriously mind-bending to think about carrying Neanderthal DNA, these possible ghost populations. It's a much messier and frankly more interesting story than the old textbook version.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Far more intricate and interconnected.
And thinking about that interconnectedness, that braided stream view, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Well, if our past is this story of mixing, adapting, changing, influenced by these other human lines, what does that suggest about our future? Given that history, what potential for further adaptation, maybe even unexpected change, lies ahead for Homo sapiens? Something for you all to think about.